The city lights shimmered in the distance, but inside the vast home of Daniel Hart, silence reigned. Daniel, known across business circles as a man of immense wealth and precision, lived in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. The polished marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of chandeliers, and the air always carried a faint fragrance of roses arranged carefully by the staff each morning. Yet, despite the grandeur, there was one presence that gave warmth to the cold halls: his little daughter, Lily. Lily was 7, full of laughter and dreams. She had her mother's eyes, though her mother's smile had been taken from the world far too soon. Losing his wife had left Daniel broken, but his daughter had become the reason he still breathed. Every morning, she would peek into his study, carrying a drawing or a flower she had picked from the garden, and he would scoop her into his arms, promising her that even if the world felt heavy, they would always have each other. But Daniel had made one choice that would soon test that promise. He had invited someone new into their lives. Her name was Cassandra. She was elegant, graceful, and seemed to charm everyone she met. In public, her laughter sparkled like champagne. In private, her gaze lingered a little too long on mirrors and diamonds. To Daniel, blinded by the hope of rebuilding a family, she seemed like the possibility of happiness. To Lily, she was simply a stranger trying to take up too much space. The one person Lily truly leaned on was Emma, the woman who had worked in the Hart household for years. Officially, she was a nanny. In reality, she had become something much more: a steady presence who soothed Lily's fears, bandaged her scraped knees, and tucked her in with bedtime stories when Daniel was away. At late meetings, Emma never tried to replace Lily's mother. She simply gave her the love she could, quietly, consistently, without asking for anything in return. That summer, Lily decided she wanted to give Emma something special, not bought with money, but made with her own small hands. She had found an old box of beads, buttons, and strings in the attic and spent afternoons hiding in her room, threading them together. Each bead she chose had a meaning: a tiny blue bead for the ocean Emma had once told her about, a golden bead for the sunlit mornings they spent in the garden, and a heart-shaped charm she had discovered in a drawer, which she saved for the center. Her fingers often fumbled, and the string knotted, but she never gave up. She imagined Emma's face lighting up when she saw it, imagined her smile, imagined how Emma might say, "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received." When the necklace was finally finished, Lily wrapped it in a small piece of tissue paper and tied it with a ribbon she had saved from a birthday present. Her heart beat faster with excitement. That morning, she tiptoed into the living room, where Cassandra sat sipping tea in a dress that sparkled even in the daylight. Daniel had just left for a meeting, leaving the house unusually quiet. Lily held the little bundle behind her back, waiting for Emma to return from the kitchen. "Good morning, Lily," Cassandra said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What are you hiding there?" Lily hesitated. She wanted Emma to be the first to see, but Cassandra's gaze was sharp. Slowly, she pulled the little gift forward, her small hands trembling. "I made this for Emma," she said softly. Cassandra took the bundle with perfectly manicured fingers. Unwrapping it with deliberate slowness, she lifted the necklace, letting it dangle. The colors shone in the light, a little uneven, imperfect, but full of care. For a moment, Cassandra's face froze, unreadable. Then her lips curved into a smirk. "This," she said, her voice sweet but edged. "It looks like something from a child's play box. Beads and buttons. This doesn't belong in this house." Lily's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to explain, but the words caught like thorns. Before she could stop her, Cassandra walked briskly to the nearby bin, dropped the necklace inside, and closed the lid as though sealing away something. Worthless, the sound echoed louder than it should have, and to Lily it was like a door slamming shut. Her eyes burned, her hands trembled, and she felt as though the floor beneath her had disappeared. She turned quickly and pressed herself against the wall, willing herself not to cry where Cassandra could see. Just then, footsteps echoed in the hall. Emma entered, humming softly, carrying a folded towel. She paused when she saw Lily's pale face and tear-filled eyes. Kneeling down instantly, she brushed a strand of hair from Lily's cheek. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Lily could barely breathe. She pointed weakly toward the bin. Confused, Emma walked over, lifted the lid, and saw the little necklace. Lying there, her heart clenched. She knew what it meant, the hours Lily must have spent, the care behind each bead. For a moment, Emma felt a wave of sorrow so sharp it nearly broke her composure. But she took a breath and steadied herself. She retrieved the necklace gently, as if it were made of glass, then returned to Lily, placing it carefully in her small hands. "This," she said softly, "is beautiful, and you know why? Because it came from your heart. That's something no one can ever throw away." Lily's tears spilled. But now they carried something more than sadness. They carried the comfort of being seen. She clutched the necklace tightly, holding it to her chest. Cassandra reappeared in the doorway, phone in hand, eyes flicking from Emma to the child. "Oh, you rescued that thing," she said lightly. "Lily, darling, don't waste your time with little crafts. You're part of a different world now. Leave such things behind." Emma straightened, her voice calm but firm. "There's nothing wasted about love, and this necklace is filled with it." Cassandra's smile faltered, just slightly. For the first time, something in her eyes darkened, as though a mask had cracked. But she quickly turned, muttered something about an appointment, and walked out of the room. Emma looked back at Lily, who was trembling but holding tightly to her gift. She whispered, "Never let anyone tell you your love doesn't matter. One day, even the smallest things you give from your heart will change someone's life." And though Lily didn't fully understand, she felt something stir inside her, something that would not be silenced. What none of them knew was that Daniel, returning unexpectedly to collect a forgotten document, had paused just beyond the doorway. He had seen the way Cassandra's hand dropped the necklace, heard Emma's words, and watched his daughter's tears. His chest tightened as a realization began to rise, a truth he could no longer ignore. Daniel stood frozen in the hallway, his hands still resting on the folder he had come back to retrieve. From where he stood, unseen, he had witnessed far more than he ever expected. The sound of Cassandra's voice dismissing his daughter's gift had pierced him in a way no business betrayal or financial loss ever had. It wasn't just a necklace being thrown away. It was his daughter's innocence, her fragile attempt to give love, discarded as if it meant nothing. For a man who had built empires and negotiated with some of the most ruthless minds in the world, Daniel had always believed he could read people. Yet here he was, realizing that the woman he had welcomed into his home, the woman he had thought might bring balance and happiness back to his broken family, had revealed a coldness that he could no longer ignore. He stepped back quietly before anyone could notice him and retreated into his study. The heavy oak door closed behind him with a muted thud, and for the first time in years, he felt powerless. He sat at his desk, staring at the city skyline beyond the glass wall. But his mind was nowhere near his empire. It was with his little girl, the daughter who had poured her heart into something simple and pure, only to be met with disdain. Images of Lily's tear-streaked face haunted him. The way she had clutched the necklace, the way Emma had comforted her. Her presence was steady as the sun. She had said something that lingered in his mind. There's nothing wasted about love. Daniel closed his eyes, and the weight of those words sank deeper. He had been so focused on finding someone to complete the image of a family that he had failed to see the truth staring at him. Love wasn't in appearances, in elegance, or in polished charm. Love was in the small things, the unseen gestures, the patience to stand beside a child's pain and transform it into hope. The sound of soft laughter from down the hall drew him back to reality. Cassandra's voice floated through the air, light and melodic, as if nothing had happened. He knew then that what he had seen wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. It was a glimpse of who she truly was when she thought no one was watching. That evening, the house seemed quieter than usual. Dinner was served on fine china. Candles flickered gently, but the atmosphere was strained. Lily sat beside Emma, picking at her food in silence. Daniel observed the way Cassandra carried herself at the table, smiling brightly. Speaking about her plans for an upcoming gala, she described dresses, jewelry, and which socialites would be in attendance. But beneath her polished words, Daniel felt a growing hollowness. Every time he looked at his daughter, he remembered the necklace, He remembered the pain in her eyes, and every time Cassandra laughed, it sounded less like music and more like a mask. "Lily," Cassandra said at one point, tilting her head, "you'll be coming to the gala too. Won't that be exciting? So many important people will be there." Lily looked up uncertainly. I'd rather stay home with Emma." The silence that followed was sharp. Cassandra's smile faltered for just a second before she quickly recovered. "Oh, darling, you'll love it once you're there. We can't hide you away forever. After all, appearances matter." Daniel set his fork down, his gaze steady on Cassandra. "Appearances," he repeated quietly, "are not everything." Cassandra blinked, caught off guard by the weight in his tone. She laughed lightly, brushing it off. "Of course, but they do open doors, isn't that right, Daniel?" But Daniel said nothing. His attention had already drifted back to Lily, who was staring down at her plate. Her shoulders slumped. That night, after the house had quieted, Daniel walked down the hallway toward his daughter's room. The door was ajar, and he paused in the shadows, watching as Emma sat on the edge of Lily's bed, reading softly from a worn storybook. Lily, though exhausted from the day's emotions, clung tightly to Emma's hand as though it anchored her. When Emma closed the book and leaned down to kiss Lily's forehead, Daniel stepped inside. Emma looked up, startled, but he lifted a hand gently. "Stay," he said softly. "Please." He sat on the other side of the bed, brushing a lock of hair from Lily's face. She stirred and blinked up at him. "Daddy," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart." His voice cracked more than he intended. "Why doesn't she like my gift?" Daniel's heart clenched. He took a deep breath, fighting for words that would both soothe her and tell the truth. "Sometimes, Lily, people don't see the value of what really matters. But that doesn't make your gift any less precious. What you made was beautiful, because it came from your heart. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Lily nodded sleepily, still clutching the necklace in her small hand. Within moments, her breathing evened, and she drifted into dreams. Daniel sat there for a long time, watching her. Emma remained quiet, her eyes lowered, but he could sense the storm of emotions she was holding back. Finally, he spoke in a low voice. "I saw everything earlier." Emma looked up, startled. You were there?" "Yes." His tone was heavy with regret. "I saw her throw it away. I saw Lily cry. And I saw you pick up the pieces." He paused. "I don't know how I've been so blind." Emma shook her head. "You wanted to believe in something." "Daniel, that doesn't make you blind. It makes you human." Her words struck him with unexpected force. Human. He had spent so long being the businessman, the problem solver, the man who controlled outcomes, that he had forgotten what it meant to be simply human, to fail, to misjudge, to hurt. And yet, even in that failure, Emma's voice carried no judgment, only compassion, for the first time in years. Daniel felt the walls around his heart begin to crack. He looked at her, really looked at her, the woman who had raised his daughter with patience and love, who had stayed in the background without ever asking for recognition, who had been the steady heartbeat of his home. And he wondered how he had missed it all this time. The next morning, as dawn light spilled across the estate, Daniel made a decision. He could not allow what he had seen to be buried in silence. He owed it to his daughter, to himself, and to the life they were trying to build. He would act, and what he planned to do would change everything for Cassandra, for Emma, and most of all, for Lily. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Hart estate, painting streaks of gold across the polished floors. Daniel stood near the glass doors of the balcony, his mind heavy with the choice he had made during the night. He had been many things in his life: a strategist, a negotiator, a man who thrived in boardrooms where power shifted with every word. But this decision was not about profits or influence. This was about his daughter. This was about the truth. Cassandra floated into the room, draped in silk, her smile poised as though every morning were a performance. "You're up early," she said, her voice smooth. "Planning another empire before breakfast." Daniel turned, his eyes steady on her. For the first time, he didn't see the polished elegance that had once caught his attention. Instead, he saw the gaps, the practiced gestures, the smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. He wondered how he had missed it for so long. "I have "Some matters to attend to," he replied simply. "Always busy," she teased lightly, walking past him to pour herself coffee. "But don't forget we have the gala this weekend. Everyone will be expecting us." "Yes," Daniel said, his tone even. "They will." Cassandra's eyes flicked to him, studying his face. She sensed something different, though she couldn't place it. But before she could press further, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then looked back at her. "I'll be in the study." Once alone, Daniel called his assistant, giving instructions that surprised even himself. He wanted changes to the guest list for the gala. He wanted certain names invited, people Cassandra wouldn't expect. And most importantly, he wanted no detail overlooked. If he was going to learn the truth, it had to be under the brightest lights, where no mask could last. Later that day, he found Lily in the garden with Emma. The child was chasing butterflies across the lawn, her laughter echoing, and for a moment, Daniel's heart softened. This was what mattered, her smile, her innocence. Emma noticed him and stood, brushing her hands against her apron. "She's feeling better today," she said quietly. Children are resilient, but she still holds onto things more deeply than she lets on. Daniel nodded. "I know." He hesitated, then added, "Emma, I owe you gratitude for everything you've done for Lily and for me, though I haven't said it often enough." Her expression softened, though she didn't reply immediately. Instead, she looked toward Lily, who was now holding a flower crown she had made, her little fingers stained with green. "Sometimes," Emma said gently, "it's not about grand gestures, it's about showing up every day, even when no one notices." Her words sank into him like rain on parched soil. He realized she wasn't speaking for recognition. She was simply stating a truth, and that truth revealed more about who she was than any polished speech or elegant dress ever could. As the days moved closer to the gala, Cassandra's excitement grew. She spent hours with designers, trying on gowns, deciding which jewels would outshine the rest. She spoke constantly about impressions, appearances, and how this event would cement her place beside Daniel. Daniel watched silently, never interrupting, never showing the storm within him. Yet his silence was not indifference, it was calculation. He wanted her to reveal herself, not in the shadows where only he and his daughter could see, but in a place where her actions could no longer be hidden. The evening of the gala arrived, and the Hart estate transformed into a spectacle. Crystal chandeliers glittered above, tables shimmered with silver, and music floated through the grand hall. Guests arrived in waves, their laughter and conversation filling the air. Cassandra moved among them like a queen, her gown flowing, her smile radiant. She thrived under the attention, unaware that the very stage she adored was about to betray her. Lily, dressed in a simple pastel dress, clung to Emma's hand as they entered quietly. She felt out of place among the glitter and noise, but Emma bent down and whispered, "Remember, Lily, you don't need to shine like the others. Your light is already inside you." Daniel stood at the center of it all, greeting guests, his expression composed but his mind sharp. He had arranged for certain people to be their trusted friends, longtime associates, even a few journalists. If Cassandra revealed her true colors tonight, there would be no denying it. As the evening progressed, Cassandra introduced herself with practiced grace, telling stories of her vision for the Hart legacy, speaking as though she already belonged. But then came the moment Daniel had quietly prepared. A staff member approached with a small box, handing it discreetly to Emma. Inside was Lily's necklace, the same one Cassandra had discarded. Daniel had asked for it to be placed there as a symbol, though Emma didn't yet know why. Emma looked at Daniel, confused, but he gave her a reassuring nod. She knelt beside Lily and whispered, "Would you like to show them your gift?" Lily's eyes widened nervously. "In front of everyone?" Emma smiled. "Yes, sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest strength." Trembling, Lily stepped forward when Daniel gestured gently. The crowd turned, curious, as the little girl held up the necklace. "I made this," she said softly, her voice quivering. "It's for Emma, because she takes care of me." A hush fell over the room. Some smiled warmly, others exchanged glances, but all eyes soon shifted to Cassandra, who had frozen in place. For one instant, her mask faltered, And Daniel saw the same disdain flicker in her eyes, the same as the day she had thrown it away. She forced a laugh. "Oh, how sweet," she said, her tone brittle. "But really, darling, such trinkets aren't meant for an occasion like this." The silence that followed was sharper than any blade. Guests exchanged uneasy looks. Emma instinctively knelt beside Lily, placing a hand on her shoulder, but Daniel stepped forward, his voice carrying. "Across the hall, on the contrary," he said firmly, "this necklace means more than any jewel in this room, because it is made of love, and love is the foundation of this family." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cassandra's smile faltered, her hand tightening around her glass. Daniel's gaze remained fixed on her, unwavering. "And perhaps," he continued, his voice low but steady, "it is time we ask ourselves what truly belongs in this house and what does not." The hall was silent again, but this time the silence carried weight, expectation, the sense that something irreversible had begun. Cassandra's eyes darted across the room, searching for support, but found only unease in the faces staring back. Daniel had not only exposed her coldness, he had done it in front of the very people whose approval she craved most. Lily clutched Emma's hand tightly, her eyes wide. She didn't yet understand the depth of what had just unfolded, but she sensed it was the beginning of something far larger than herself. And as Cassandra's composure cracked, Daniel knew the choice he had been avoiding was no longer one he could delay. The path forward had revealed itself, and it would demand courage from them all. The silence after Daniel's words stretched long and heavy, like a curtain that refused to lift. The guests stood frozen, their glasses half raised, their conversations stilled. Cassandra's laugh faltered and died on her lips, leaving only the sound of the orchestra in the background, a melody now strangely out of place. Daniel's presence commanded the room. Though he hadn't raised his voice, his tone was calm, but it carried the kind of weight no one could ignore. It wasn't just a statement, it was a declaration. The necklace, simple and imperfect, had become a symbol that turned the evening upside down. Cassandra forced her smile back onto her face, her hand tightening around the stem of her glass until her knuckles whitened. "Daniel," she said sweetly, though there was an edge beneath her tone, "you're embarrassing us. It was only a child's craft. There's no need to make it into something more." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their eyes, others whispered to one another. Emma, kneeling beside Lily, held the little girl's hand firmly, her protective presence shielding her from the sharpness of Cassandra's words. Daniel's gaze never left Cassandra. "You call it only a child's craft," he said slowly, "but what you see as worthless is what makes it priceless. Love cannot be measured by jewels, gowns, or appearances, and anyone who cannot see that does not belong in this house." The statement landed with the force of a stone dropped in still water. Gasps scattered through the hall. Cassandra's composure cracked, her eyes flashed as she struggled to maintain control. For a woman who thrived on admiration, the sudden shift of attention away from her and onto a child's necklace felt like a humiliation she could not bear. She set her glass down to sharply, the sound sharp against the crystal table. "Daniel," she said, her tone clipped now, "we should speak privately. This isn't the place." "On the contrary," he replied, his voice low but resolute, "this is exactly the place. For too long, appearances have masked the truth. Tonight, I will no longer hide what I've seen." The guests were silent, riveted. What had begun as an evening of glamour had transformed into something raw, real, unforgettable. Cassandra's mask slipped further. Her smile grew thin, her words sharper. "So this is what it comes to. You choose that?" She gestured toward Emma and Lily, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "A necklace of beads, a nanny who clings to her place. Here, and a child's tears over everything we've built together." Emma's face remained calm, though her heart raced. She had not asked for this moment, had not wanted to be placed at the center of such a storm. Yet she would not shrink from protecting Lily. She pulled the child closer, whispering reassurance as Lily buried her face against her shoulder. Daniel straightened, every inch of him radiating authority. "What we've built together," he said, "is nothing but an illusion if it requires me to overlook cruelty." Love cannot survive in a home where kindness is discarded like trash. The words struck deeper than Cassandra had expected. Her face flushed, her eyes darted around the room, searching for someone to side with her. But the murmurs among the guests told her all she needed to know. The perfect image she had so carefully crafted was unraveling. Her voice rose slightly, desperate. "Do you even hear yourself? You would throw away everything, the connections, the image, the future over a child's trinket." Daniel stepped closer, his voice quiet but piercing. It was never about the necklace. It was about what it represented. A child's love, innocence, the ability to give freely without expecting anything in return. If you cannot understand that, Cassandra, then you never truly belonged here. The room seemed to tilt, the tension thick enough to choke. For a heartbeat, Cassandra looked as though she might argue further, but the sight of the guests watching, whispering, judging, silenced her. Her pride could not withstand the weight of their eyes. "I won't be humiliated," she hissed under her breath. Her voice meant only for Daniel, but sharp enough to cut. She spun on her heel, her gown trailing behind her like a shadow, and strode out of the hall. The doors slammed shut behind her, the echo reverberating through the vast space. The orchestra faltered, then fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was Lily's small, uneven breaths against Emma's shoulder. Daniel turned back to the crowd, his expression steady. "The gala is over," he announced. "I thank you for coming, but tonight is no longer about appearances. It is about truth, and truth, I've learned, does not need an audience." The guests departed in hushed waves, leaving the hall strangely hollow. The glitter of chandeliers now dimmed against the weight of what had just taken place. When the last of them had gone, Daniel walked slowly to Emma and Lily. He knelt, reaching out to brush a tear from his daughter's cheek. "You were brave tonight," he whispered. "You showed everyone what love really looks like." Lily leaned into him, her small voice muffled. "Will she come back?" Daniel hesitated, his hand tightening slightly around hers. "No," he said finally, his voice firm but gentle. "Not if she cannot see what matters most." Emma stood silently, her emotions a storm beneath her calm exterior. She had never imagined such a moment unfolding in her life, yet she knew this was not an ending. It was the beginning of something far more complicated, because though Cassandra had left the hall in humiliation, Emma knew her well enough to understand that she would not walk away quietly. A woman who thrived on power and appearances would not surrender without a fight. And in the quiet that settled over the estate that night, Emma felt a chill of unease. Cassandra might have been exposed, but she was not gone. The real battle, Emma realized, had only just begun. The mansion was quieter than ever after the gala. But the silence did not bring peace. It was the silence of something unsettled, the kind that lingered before a storm. Daniel had dismissed the staff early, sent Lily to bed with Emma by her side, and sat alone in his study, the faint glow of a lamp casting long shadows across the shelves of books. He should have felt relief. Cassandra was gone, her true nature revealed before everyone. Yet unease gnawed at him. People like Cassandra did not vanish into the night. They waited, they schemed, they returned with sharper claws. Daniel leaned back in his chair, replaying every moment of the evening. Lily's trembling voice as she held up the necklace, the flicker of disdain in Cassandra's eyes, the gasps from the guests. It had all been necessary. Though painful, he had protected his daughter's heart, and that gave him strength. But he also knew that the battle was not finished. In another part of the house, Emma sat beside Lily's bed, stroking the girl's hair as she drifted into sleep. The necklace lay on the bedside table, gleaming faintly in the lamplight, more precious than the finest diamonds. Emma's own heart felt heavy, though she had stood by Lily through countless tears. Tonight had shown her something else. Daniel had finally seen the truth. For years, she had stayed in the background, loving Lily quietly, never daring to imagine herself as anything more than a caretaker. But when Daniel had spoken so firmly, so clearly, her heart had stirred with emotions she had long buried. She pushed them aside, reminding herself that this was not about her. It was about the child who trusted her, and the father who had finally begun to see with new eyes. The next morning, Cassandra's absence was obvious. Her perfume no longer lingered in the halls. Her laughter no longer echoed in the rooms. Lily seemed lighter, her shoulders less tense, though she still clung to Emma at every step. Daniel noticed, and each time, a pang of guilt struck him for having ever allowed Cassandra to wound his daughter. But while the house began to heal, Cassandra was far from gone, across the city, in the glittering penthouse of a hotel. She sat by a window overlooking the skyline. Her expression was cold, her pride wounded. She replayed the humiliation again, and again the whispers of the guests, Daniel's piercing words. The way her carefully constructed image had collapsed in an instant. No, she would not allow it to end this way. She had worked too hard to climb into Daniel's world, too hard to carve out her place among the powerful, and she would not be pushed aside by a child and a nanny. Her fingers tightened around her phone as an idea began to form. If she could not win back Daniel's affection, she would strike at the foundation of what he cared about most. If Lily and Emma were his strength, then they would become her leverage. Days passed. Daniel immersed himself in his company's affairs, but his attention was never far from home. He returned earlier than usual, joined Lily and Emma for simple dinners, and began to notice the way laughter slowly crept back into the house. Lily smiled more. She painted again, filling her room with bright colors. Emma encouraged her gently, and Daniel found himself watching the two of them with a mixture of admiration and something deeper he struggled to name. One evening, as they sat in the garden watching the sunset, Lily placed the necklace around Emma's neck and declared, "Now everyone will see it's not just beads, it's love." Emma's eyes shimmered as she embraced the child, and Daniel felt something shift in his chest. But just as light returned, shadows lengthened elsewhere. Cassandra began appearing at places she knew Daniel's associates frequented. Whispers reached him questions about what had really happened at the gala. Doubts planted carefully. She smiled sweetly as she told half-truths, painting herself as misunderstood, casting Emma as manipulative, and suggesting Daniel had been blinded by grief and misplaced trust. When these rumors reached Daniel, he remained outwardly calm, but inside, anger simmered. He knew Cassandra's game, yet he also knew that words, once planted, had a way of growing. One afternoon, as he returned home, he found Emma waiting in the library, worry in her eyes. "I heard something in town today," she said softly. "Someone mentioned that I've been trying to take Cassandra's place, that I've been using Lily to get closer to you." Her voice shook with quiet pain. "Daniel, I never." He cut her off gently. "I know. You don't need to defend yourself to me." But Emma's composure faltered. "Lies have a way of spreading. I don't care what they say about me, but if this affects Lily." Daniel stepped closer, his voice firm. "Lily will always be protected. And Emma, I see you for who you are. No lie can change that." The sincerity in his voice left her speechless. For a moment, silence filled the space between them, heavy with unspoken truths neither dared to voice. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He stood by the window of his room, staring at the city lights, knowing Cassandra was out there, tightening her net. He could almost hear her laughter, mocking him from afar. He would not let her win, not this time. Across the hall, Emma sat, awake too, staring at the necklace resting on her nightstand. She thought of Lily's innocence, of Daniel's newfound strength, and of the storm that still hovered just beyond their reach. Neither of them realized that Cassandra's plan was already in motion. She had not only spread whispers, she had found someone willing to help her dig deeper, someone within Daniel's circle who believed her promises of wealth and status. The house felt safe for now, but danger was drawing closer, step by step, like a shadow that lengthens with the fading sun. And soon, it would reach their doorstep. Asterisk storms do not always arrive with thunder and lightning. Sometimes they creep in silently, disguised as whispers and small cracks that widen until everything trembles. Daniel sensed this storm long before it arrived. Each day, new murmurs reached him, Cassandra's carefully spun stories spreading, further reaching people he trusted. Doubts were being planted like weeds in a garden he had worked tirelessly to protect. One morning, as Daniel reviewed papers in his office, his longtime associate, Richard, arrived with a heavy look in his eyes. "Daniel," he began carefully, "there are things being said about Emma that she's positioning herself to take Cassandra's place, that she's manipulating Lily to win your favor. You know, I've always supported you, but people are talking. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes cold. People, he repeated, or Cassandra. Richard shifted uncomfortably. It doesn't matter where it started. What matters is how quickly it's spreading. You can't ignore it. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but steady. Richard, I've faced competitors who tried to strip my company apart piece by piece, and I've faced nights where grief nearly hollowed me out. Do you think I will bow to a lie? Emma has done nothing but give my daughter love when I was too blinded to see. That is the truth, and truth stands no matter how many lies surround it. Richard studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I believe you, but you must be ready, Daniel. Cassandra won't stop. And she didn't. A week later, invitations were sent to an exclusive charity event hosted by a mutual acquaintance. Daniel received one, as expected. But what surprised him was seeing Cassandra's name printed boldly as a special guest. It was clear she was planning something public, something calculated. The night of the event, Daniel made his choice. He brought Lily and Emma with him, not as a statement of defiance, but as a declaration of where his heart truly stood. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, laughter, and the murmur of wealthy guests. Cassandra was already there, radiant in a gown of deep crimson, her smile polished, her eyes sharp as glass, when she saw Daniel enter with Emma and Lily. Her lips curved in a smile that did not reach her eyes. The evening began smoothly, but Daniel could sense the tension beneath every polite greeting. Whispers followed them, eyes darting between Emma and Cassandra, waiting for sparks to fly. It happened when the speeches began. The host introduced Cassandra as a guest of honor, and she took the stage gracefully. Her words were sweet, her tone flawless, but beneath the surface, venom threaded each sentence. Family, she said, her eyes sweeping across the crowd, lingering briefly on Daniel. It is the foundation of everything we build, but we must be careful whom we allow into that circle. Not everyone who claims loyalty truly deserves it. The room stirred. Emma's hands tightened around Lily's shoulders, but Daniel placed a steady hand over hers, a silent assurance. Cassandra's smile grew sharper. Sometimes, those who seem kindest hide the deepest ambitions. Sometimes, the ones who stand in the shadows are the ones most eager to step into the light when it suits them. Her gaze fixed directly on Emma, the implication clear. Gasps rippled. The trap had been laid. Daniel rose from his seat. The room fell silent as he walked to the stage, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Cassandra's smile wavered, though she tried to hold it. He took the microphone from her hand, his voice calm but resonant. Cassandra speaks of family, he began. But let me tell you what family truly is. Family is not built on appearances. It is not secured by jewels or grand gestures. It is built in the quiet moments when someone stays by your side in grief, when someone wipes away a child's tears, when love is given freely without expectation of return. His eyes moved across the room, pausing on Emma and Lily. Emma has never sought the spotlight. She has never asked for recognition, but she has given more to this family than anyone else. And it's time I say it clearly. Her place here is not questioned. It is earned every day through love. A hush blanketed the ballroom. Cassandra's face paled, her mask cracking. Daniel continued, his voice firm. As for Cassandra, she once entered this house wearing elegance and promises. But I saw the truth when she dismissed a child's gift of love as worthless. That necklace, those beads and buttons held more value than any jewel she flaunts. Because love, no matter how simple, is priceless. The room erupted in murmurs, some shocked, some moved. Cassandra, cornered, tried to regain her footing. You can't, Daniel. You're letting them manipulate you. Daniel met her gaze steadily. No, Cassandra. I was blind before, but now I see for the first time. Cassandra faltered, truly faltered. Her pride could not withstand the weight of the truth laid bare before so many witnesses. With no ally left to defend her, she turned abruptly and left the stage, her gown sweeping behind her like a fading shadow. The crowd applauded not for her departure, but for the courage of what had been spoken. Emma sat frozen, tears brimming in her eyes, Lily clapped her small hands, not fully understanding the depth of what had happened, but sensing the joy around her. Daniel returned to his seat, his gaze softening as he looked at Emma. "No more whispers," he said quietly. "No more shadows. This is our truth." That night, when they returned home, the house felt different, lighter. The walls no longer echoed with silence, but with the quiet strength of something real taking root. Before Lily went to bed, she placed the necklace back in Emma's hand and whispered, "Now it's even more special, because everyone knows it's love." Emma hugged her tightly, unable to hold back tears. Later, when the house had grown still, Daniel found Emma in the garden under the silver glow of the moon. She turned as he approached, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Emma," he said softly, "I've made many mistakes. I chased appearances when love was right in front of me all along. You were right, love isn't wasted. It is what saves us." Her breath caught, her heart racing. "Daniel," but he shook his head gently, "not tonight. Tonight is not for promises or grand declarations. Tonight is only for gratitude. For you, for Lily, for this chance to finally see what matters." The words lingered in the cool night air, more powerful than any vow. Emma smiled through her tears, and for the first time, Daniel felt not the weight of wealth or responsibility, but the lightness of a heart finally free. The storm had come, but it had passed, and in its place, love remained quiet, steadfast, and unshakable. What they did not yet know was that this moment, simple as it seemed, would become the foundation of a new beginning, a beginning that would change their lives forever.